Welcome to the Spiritist Companion Podcast. My name is Yuri Castro, and I'm going to be your companion on this journey where we study, reflect, and put Spiritist teachings into practice. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to subscribe and follow our weekly episodes released every Monday. This week specifically, I had laryngitis and I lost my voice for 12 days, so I couldn't release it by Monday, but usually we release it every Monday. And today's theme is timely, challenging, and full of hope as well. Planetary transition. So the process of moral and spiritual renewal of Earth, announced by Jesus and explained by Spiritism. But what does planetary transition actually mean? Well, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 3, In My Father's House Are Many Mansions, Allan Kardec introduces the Spiritist view of worlds and the progression of those worlds. He also mentions that passage found in John where Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." And Kardec explains that these many mansions are the many worlds scattered across the universe, each at its own stage of progress. We learn that the house of the Father is the universe and that these different mansions are these worlds that circulate in the infinite space, and they offer the spirits that incarnate on them dwelling places corresponding to their progress. So we also find out that the conditions of the various worlds, they differ from one another with respect to the degree of elevation or inferiority of the inhabitants. In the inferior worlds, existence is all material, passions are sovereign, morality is almost inexistent. But at the same time that the soul is progressing, the material influence diminishes to such an extent that in the elevated worlds, we learn that life is, by way of saying, all spiritual. Progress being a law of nature also applies to the worlds. So at the same time that the living beings progress morally, the worlds in which these living beings inhabit, they progress materially as well. And then we have in the Gospel according to Spiritism as well, a classification or categories of worlds that the spirits gave us, and they said there are 5. First, they say are the primitive worlds, and these are destined to receive the initial incarnations of the human soul, meaning where the spirit is still very much primitive, where passions rule everything and everything is very material. There's little understanding of God and everything else. Second are the tests and atonements. So in these worlds, this is where evil predominates still. They are more evolved than the primitive ones, but they are still planets of suffering, planets of, like the name says, tests that will improve the spirit, and atonements for the mistakes the immortal spirit has made in a previous life. Third, there are the regenerating worlds where the souls who still have to atone may absorb new strength by resting from the fatigue of fighting. From the fatigue of fighting by living in a planet of tests and atonements. Fourth, we have the blessed worlds, where goodness outweighs evil. And last but not least, the divine worlds, which are worlds inhabited by purified spirits, where only good exists. Matter is also very different from one world to the other. And it's important for us to understand that as the spirit progresses, as the worlds progress, matter has less of an influence. And actually we have matter in different types that we're not even aware of yet in these worlds as they get better and better. Our dear Earth, up until now, has been classified as a world of trials and expiations or trials and atonements, where the incarnated spirits face struggles, they face suffering and challenges that are necessary for the growth. But it's important to say here, my friends, that this state is not permanent. Just as the spirits evolve, so do the worlds that host them. We learn through so many spiritist books that the earth is progressing. It's becoming this world of regeneration. But what does this mean? Well, this means that we live in a time of transition. Earth is gradually ceasing to be predominantly a stage of suffering to become a world of regeneration, where good begins to prevail over evil, slowly but surely. And in the book Genesis, Allan Kardec also writes that the time has come when moral ideas must be developed in order to bring about the progress that is included in the designs of God. They must follow the progress of intellect that has already reached a certain level. It is necessary to purify it so it will not be harmful. So there's this idea that we already evolved, intellectually speaking, technologically speaking even, to make that leap, but we're still lagging behind in the moral development. That's the one that we're still trying to attain. Therefore, the planetary transition is this natural process, guided by divine law, preparing Earth for a new stage of progress. But how do we perceive this change, this planetary transition? Well, Kardec teaches us that nothing is about supernatural catastrophes or anything that's going to shake the earth physically or something that's going to be absolutely obvious. But this transition, the changes are going to be of a moral nature, of social transformations. In the book Genesis, chapter 18, he's going to say that this is not going to be a sudden transformation, but one that's going to occur gradually through the incarnation of better spirits and the exclusion of the bad ones, meaning those who were not able to progress morally to inhabit a world of regeneration. Those spirits are going to have to be dislocated. They're going to have to inhabit another world of tests and atonements that is very much compatible to their moral progress. Because the world right now is progressing morally, even though it may not seem that way when we look around, it is progressing morally, and these spirits that are not up to par, they are gonna have to live in other worlds. So spirits that are still hardened and evil, rebellious against the law of love, they will no longer have a place here on earth. But the spirits in tune with goodness, they will incarnate in greater numbers, bringing new values, ideas, and building a more just and fraternal society. And yes, this process is a painful one. It involves crises, conflicts, ruptures, but they are, and we can even imagine here, birth pains, the labor of a new humanity being born, of a new planet being born in some way. But why do we need this transition? Well, because God causes worlds to progress through the incarnation of the spirits that inhabit them. And we learn this in the Gospel according to Spiritism, still on chapter 3. When spirits have reached the degree of progress that the world can sustain, they pass on to a more advanced world, while other less advanced ones come to take their place. So if a spirit progressed sort of quickly and they need to inhabit another world that's a little bit better, they're going to go to that world, or they may stay behind to help those who are going to be incarnating here or reincarnating, perhaps, to progress as well. Therefore, we learn, my dear friends, that the planetary transition is not punishment by any means. It's the natural law of progress, to each according to their own deeds. Earth evolves, we evolve, and the earth helps us forward with its trials and opportunities. And if we look around, we're going to see that there are many conflicts nowadays. There are so many wars, inequality, crisis, social disarray, and it's very easy to feel fearful or feel discouraged. But Spiritism, being the promised consoler, as we talked about on episode 12, brings this new understanding of these events that are part of a process of purification. It brings hope. Just as the storm clears the air for new balance, the planetary transition allows errors to be exposed, old structures to collapse, and the new to emerge, all in favor of the law of progress, the law of love of our God. It is hard, but how can we live in the light of the planetary transition? How can we apply these concepts, this knowledge that Spiritism brings? Well, I brought 3 things that we can think about here, my dear friends. Number 1, moral reform. Each spirit must be an example of change, living the gospel in daily life, being the change you wish to see in the world. This moral transformation, this inner transformation is very much important. And number 2, serving others. Regeneration is not going to fall from the skies. No, it's going to be built by human hands through this moral transformation, through charity, through service, through fraternity, the real fraternity. Number 3, trust the future. Pessimism is incompatible with reasoned faith. Earth is destined for good because that is God's law. Everything must progress. Everything is fair because God is infinitely just, good, and fair. So we must have the trust in the future. And for that, we can even think of Jesus Christ that we learn, and we can see this one also in the book, On the Way to the Light, psychographed by Chico Xavier, by the Spirit Emmanuel, where they're going to talk about how Jesus is this high spirit that is in control of earth. So we're not just leaderless. We have a very, very wise, loving leader that is guiding every step, that is overseeing us. So we must have hope that nothing is happening without Jesus being here. My dear friends, the planetary transition we're talking about is not the end, but it's actually the beginning of a new stage. So it's not about fear, but about hope. Not about destruction, but renewal. Spiritism teaches us that the future of the earth will be one of peace and love, and each one of us is called to help build it. As Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." May we be among those who work for regeneration, bringing light, faith, and love to a world in transformation. And just like that, we reach the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for joining me in the Spiritist Companion podcast. And if this message brought you hope, clarity, share it with someone who also needs that encouragement. I'll see you next Monday, my dear friends, with another study. Until then, stay strong in the light of the gospel, certain that we never walk alone. With fraternal love, your Spiritist Companion.